we already have coaching news. I cannot believe this. We sit here, we haven't even played week 18, and we find out the breaking news this morning. Mike Vrabel is in Jersey, where he will be interviewing with the New York Jets. Important to note here, he becomes the first candidate to be interviewed by the Jets. The Jets get ahead of everybody else that may want to interview Vrabel. And as the NFL Network pointed out, they're doing the interview at the facility. So it gives him a chance to get to know everybody and see what the place is like. There's a lot to this. Jori, are you at all surprised that the Jets are the first on the Vrabel train here?
I mean, I think it's smart that the Jets are the first on the Vrabel train because in order to be interviewing now, you need a couple of things. You need, one, the coach to already be available to interview, and two, the team to already be able to interview the coach. And so from a coaching standpoint, you need a coach who is not under contract with a regular season team. And soon it's going to be with a playoff team that will even delay some people further because the league recently changed the rules to make sure that you can't interview in person for a certain number of hours until you're a certain level of depth into the playoffs or no longer in the playoffs. And then from a team standpoint, like if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, Doug Peterson is still your head coach. And even if it's expected that he won't be the coach in 2025, it's not an NFL practice for teams to start hiring before someone is literally out of the building. And so I think that's what's interesting. And I think we see this one. Mike Vrabel got released from his Browns consulting contract a week early so that he could do this. I think that it's possible that the Jets aren't even the only coach in the New York area that would interview Mike Vrabel. And so if the Jets really want him, they might as well, I would say if they really want him, they should make that full court press now. And if they think they want him, they should try and get that information to determine that now. So it makes a lot of sense to me. That I'm not surprised because it's really one of the few edges both sides have right now.
I think it's a smart move. I just wonder who's courting who. Like, does Mike Vrabel want the Jets? That's the thing. He could talk to him right now, and that, like you talked about, it's smart by the Jets. They kind of stumbled into it because nothing the Jets do is really smart. But they can interview him now before everybody else. What do the Jets have to sell, really, on Mike Vrabel? Like, that's just it's a bad organization. Everybody knows it. Like that, all the Woody Johnson stuff. We've already know. We might not have known the specifics, but we knew like it's a dysfunctional organization. Mike Vrabel, I assume, is going to have options. He's a great coach. Now, if the Jets could land him, I think it's a big hire for the Jets. Like that, he'd be like, when Rex Ryan's name is being brought up, you're like, well, I didn't expect it, but if we think about it, Rex Ryan's probably their best coach for the last 30 years. Like, okay, like he's the only one that's really had any level of success there. So I think it works on multiple levels. I just don't know if Mike Vrabel's going to want the Jets, honestly. It's kind of like the Bears job. Like when we're talking about Ben Johnson, like it's not the Bears trying to land Ben Johnson. It's Ben Johnson. Does he want the Bears? It's one of those weird courting things where the team's not courting the coach. The coach is courting the team, and the Jets are just a tire fire right now. I don't know that any really good candidate would want to go coach there with Aaron Rodgers on his way out and no real solution at quarterback and a lot of aging guys who they put around Aaron Rodgers to try to win this year, and that didn't obviously happen. So long story short, I think it would be a great hire for the Jets if they can land Vrabel. I have a lot of respect for him as a coach. I just don't know that that's Mike Vrabel's best opportunity.
Can I tell you though, Frank, I feel like almost every team either doesn't have the talent or doesn't have the ideal ownership or situation or has a front office. And I'm sure this is just a really common situation that everyone is going to be able to say, I don't know who you're talking about, that has a GM and a president who you're not sure about the structure and who's actually in charge. And I think when you look at it, I think about this with all of these coaches. And I know we're talking about Mike Vrabel, but I'm going to shift the conversation briefly because I was having a conversation with someone this week and I was asking them, what do you think Mike McCarthy and the Cowboys are going to do? Because as we've talked about extensively on this show, Mike McCarthy's on the final year of his contract. So the Cowboys and Mike McCarthy each have a decision to make of whether they want to continue this relationship. This is not the type of thing that they have to make a decision to split, but not a decision to keep moving forward together. They need a new contract. And then someone was trying to convince me, and I can't say I was totally convinced, that Mike McCarthy would rather coach the New Orleans Saints in 2025 than the Dallas Cowboys. And while I can understand how that would be a conversation that comes up in the rhetoric, to me, I'm wondering, oh, well, if you don't know if you're going to have an opportunity to coach the Cowboys in 2025, it makes sense to start saying, hey, maybe the Saints. If you've also coached the Saints as an offensive coordinator in the past. But when I look at it, and I was like, this person was trying to convince me that the Cowboys structure with Jerry Jones was so unappealing that, like, oh, the Saints don't have that same ownership structure. Look, first of all, Mike McCarthy is one of the best coaches I've seen. I mean, Jason Garrett might be up there too, of willingness and ability to deal with Jerry Jones and be unfazed by it. Like, he's like got that Pittsburgh mentality, like, all right, cool, you say that, I'll deal with what I'm dealing with. But even forgetting that, this is not like ownership only. When I look at the talent on the Cowboys roster and the talent on the Saints roster, it's not comparable right now. And so I was not convinced. And so my thing is like, okay, the Jets. Well, if the Jets have a worse ownership structure than the Giants, but the Giants have less talent, and I will say, I think the Giants have more talent than is being used, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, which Mike Vrabel would be able to take and really capitalize on. But I think, I mean, what if one team has ownership and one team has talent? Then what do you do?
By the way, as you go through all these teams, you're right. Like which of these job openings is appealing? Like the
Yeah,
Saints?
this is how Bill Belichick
No.
ends up at North Carolina.
Yeah, right. Like, I mean, you really think about these jobs. You're right. Like, I'm sitting here trashing the Jets, but are the Saints any better with their salary cap issues and lack of talent and aging talent? The Cowboys any better with their clown show? Everybody coming through the star every day. Is it? You go. There's a reason. The Bears, Kevin Warren, that whole situation, and you're right. All of these openings, the ones that we anticipate anyway, there's a drawback to each and every one. There's a reason these teams are looking for new head coaches, and it's probably not just the fired head coach's fault.
Right, like Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner, regardless of quarterback, that to me is just a better situation than like the Giants from a talent standpoint.